found that the heavier jets have difficulty being launched using the old hydraulic catapults. The answer is the steam catapult. Yet another British invention is the ejector seat. This makes it possible for pilots to get out of an aircraft in trouble, something that is impossible to do if using just a parachute in a jet aircraft. These inventions bring the Royal Navy back to the forefront of carrier technology. A new era of carrier-based jet aircraft now begins. Supermarine, a company that had built so many naval aircraft between the wars, now produces aircraft such as the Attacker, which is the Navy's first pure jet fighter. It is followed by the Scimitar in 1960. Aircraft such as these are mixed on the flight decks of the new fleet carriers with the last of the remaining piston-engined aircraft. The zenith for the British carrier fleet is in the 1960s. The Navy now has fully operational fleet carriers that hold dozens of aircraft. They also have new aircraft to counter the threat from Soviet ships menacing the sea lanes. In the strike role is the Buccaneer. It is purpose-built to fly low and deliver either conventional bombs or a nuclear weapon. Its rugged design is perfect for the rigors of the flight deck with heavy landings and explosive takeoffs.
Miles to target. Okay, I see the lakes. I've got the target. Here we go. Bomb selected. Roger.
The chosen fighter is the marvelous Phantom. It is bought from America, where it has proved to be a first-rate fighter for the US Navy. They also fly the Fairy Gannet, an aircraft that proves to be an ideal early warning aircraft, despite being one of the ugliest aircraft ever built.
The crew's clear. FDO winding up to take off power. Full power. Green from Trico. Go. Back into the seat and away.
However, it is the development of the vertical takeoff Harrier and the usefulness of the helicopter that revolutionizes the Royal Navy. The government's determination to get rid of the costly fleet carriers is helped by VSTOL development. These radical new aircraft can be flown off much smaller ships, the first of the Navy's new through-deck cruisers being delivered in 1980.
Let's look again at how simple the launch technique is for the pilot. Lined up and ready to go. Brakes off, full throttle, accelerate with nozzles aft, steering between the tram lines, nozzles down. Transition and climb away.
Of course, there is not just aircraft carrier development in the post-war years. The submarine has advanced throughout the period, but it is the coming of the nuclear deterrent that really makes the difference. In 1969, the Royal Navy becomes the keeper of Britain's nuclear deterrent, taking over from the RAF. A new generation of powerful Polaris submarines takes to the seas. The Royal Marines also benefit from new ships. In 1960, the carrier HMS Bulwark emerges from refitting as a commando ship. She departs for the Far East, where she exercises with her contingent of Marines. They are now able to use either landing craft or helicopters to get ashore, extending the great tradition of amphibious forces established during the Second World War. The Royal Navy is involved in many small peacekeeping operations and short conflicts during the post-war years. However, it is not until the 1980s that a major challenge appears. For the Royal Navy, 1982 is probably her most momentous year since the Second World War. On the night of the 1st of April, the Falkland Islands are invaded by Argentina, claiming the islands for themselves. Within 3 days, 2 aircraft carriers, the old HMS Hermes and the much newer HMS Invincible, sail for the South Atlantic. Hermes carries the flag of Rear Admiral Sandy Woodward, commander of the naval operation. The operation consists of 4 phases. First, the Navy has to sail to protect the sea lines of communication. The Falklands are thousands of miles away from Britain, and therefore the supply lines are extremely long. Secondly, they have to gain control of the sea and airspace around the islands. While Sea Harriers from Hermes attack the 2 airfields on the islands, others from Invincible, armed with Sidewinder missiles, maintain combat air patrols ready to attack any Argentine aircraft that attempt to attack the strike force. Several enemy aircraft are shot down. Over the next few days, the Royal Navy has mixed fortunes. On the 2nd of May, the submarine HMS Conqueror torpedoes and sinks the Argentine cruiser General Belgrano. Although she is outside the exclusion zone, she is considered too much of a threat and is dispatched to the bottom of the sea. However, 2 days later, the Type 42 destroyer HMS Sheffield is hit by an Exocet missile fired from an Argentine Superetendard. With the loss of these 2 ships, there is now full-scale war at sea. The third phase is to support the landings to retake the islands. Another ship, the frigate Ardent, is lost to bombing, and by the 25th of May, the air attacks are at their peak. The destroyer Coventry and the transport ship Atlantic Conveyor are both lost. The loss of the latter ship is a terrible blow. Despite having offloaded her Harriers, she still carried 10 helicopters and vast quantities of stores for the land campaign. On the 28th of May, the troops ashore move out of the beachhead. Now the Navy enters its final phase of the operation, that of supporting the land battle. On the 8th of June, a daring move to land troops at Bluff Cove in the southeast turns to disaster. First, the landing ship Sir Galahad is attacked and turned into a blazing wreck. Soon afterwards, her sister ship, Sir Tristram, is severely damaged. This attack by Argentine daggers and Skyhawks is one of the most damaging of the campaign. 57 troops and crew are killed, with many more wounded. However, a few days later, the war is over, and the British troops retake the islands and Argentina surrenders. Many lessons are learned from the Falklands campaign. The use of the Harrier is vindicated by the success of the air battle over the Falklands. However, there is concern over the ease with which ships of the task force are attacked. A new frigate, the Type 23, takes on board many of the lessons. More separate compartments are added to isolate damage and control the spread of fire and smoke. New air defense capabilities are also added. After the conflict, the British government reverses the earlier decision to reduce the size of the Navy. It also states that the Navy should be prepared for out-of-area operations as well as those in the waters around Britain. However, just a few years later, the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union leads the Treasury to slash millions from the defense budget. The main effects are to be the reduction of the Navy's submarine and surface fleets, leaving the carriers and the fleet air arm untouched. As the proposals go before Parliament, another war looms, this time in the Gulf. In 1990, Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, invades and occupies Kuwait. Fearing for the future of their oil supplies and for the independence of Kuwait, the Western powers begin a build-up of troops, aircraft and ships in the Gulf. The Royal Navy plays a leading role in the blockade of Iraq, designed to force its withdrawal from Kuwait. However, blockade takes a long time to have an effect, and time and patience run out. During the war itself, minesweeping operations allow the Navy to operate surface ships far in advance of other naval forces, providing an advanced defense and early warning barrier. This enables Lynx helicopters to carry out a superb series of attacks on Iraqi naval units with their anti-ship missiles. After the Gulf War, the Navy is back to defending themselves against government cuts, despite the fact that they're expected to take part in NATO operations around the world. The next assignment is to enforce sanctions against the former states of Yugoslavia that had broken up after the fall of communism. Amongst others, the carrier Ark Royal patrols the Adriatic Sea, using her Harriers to great effect. When the sanctions prove to be ineffective, the Harriers go on the offensive. Halfway through the final decade of the century, the emphasis for the Royal Navy is mobility and flexibility, perhaps another way of saying smaller. At the end of the 20th century, the Royal Navy is a slimmed-down force based on 3 main capabilities supported by escorts and other vital units. The most visible of these is maritime air power. The Navy has 3 aircraft carriers: HMS Invincible, Illustrious, and possibly the most famous name in naval history, Ark Royal. The core of each of these ships is their aircraft, and in the Sea Harrier FA-2, they have one of the most potent fighters in the world. Armed with the latest advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles, or AMRAAMs for short, they are fleet defense fighters par excellence. They also carry laser-guided bombs and Sea Eagle missiles, giving them an advanced strike capability. Aircraft carriers, of course, also have a complement of Sea King helicopters, both for anti-submarine warfare and for air-sea rescue. These are always on hand, patrolling the seas around the ship to counter any potential covert attack. The Sea King has also been joined by an updated Lynx, the Mark 8, the latest anti-submarine and anti-ship helicopter. When at sea, the aircraft carrier is always the command and control center for the surface flotilla. Surrounding her will be a small group of vessels vital to the everyday tasks of life at sea. There will be frigates, tasked to scan on and below the waves for enemy craft. There will be destroyers using their early warning radar and anti-aircraft missiles to ward off enemy air attacks. And there may well be a host of other vessels, all needed to keep naval operations going. One of the most spectacular sights is a replenishment at sea. This is carried out by one of the Royal Fleet Auxiliaries ships. She comes within meters of a carrier to deliver everything from food and post for the crew to thousands of tons of fuel to keep both the ship and her aircraft going. It is difficult enough in calm seas during peacetime. Just imagine doing this in treacherous waters in a war zone with the possibility of enemy attack. Just as the aircraft carrier is a highly visible force, so the submarine is the silent hunter, going about her business in the deep. The Royal Navy now has two types of submarine. The SSBN, or Submarine Ballistic Nuclear in naval parlance, provides Britain's nuclear deterrent. The SSN, or just plain submarine nuclear, provides a more conventional deterrent. Now that Polaris has gone, the latest Vanguard-class SSBNs carry Trident missiles. The submarine and its deadly load of 16 Tridents are possibly the most powerful force in the world today. Almost 500 feet long and weighing 16,000 tons, Vanguard is the largest UK submarine ever built. As part of the NATO deterrent forces, the SSBN is insurance against the worst-case possibilities. While the SSBN takes on a worldwide strategic role, the SSNs offer a more tactical approach. If the Royal Navy wants to monitor opposition forces, protect an area for an amphibious landing, or seek out and destroy an enemy submarine, they call on the services of an SSN. But their most recent and most publicized role has been one of striking the enemy from afar. For this, they use the Tomahawk land attack cruise missile, which has a range of about 600 miles. The first use of a British Tomahawk was during the recent conflict in Kosovo. Built in the United States, these highly sophisticated missiles have the ability to fly at varying altitudes, keeping below enemy radar, hugging the terrain, and striking with alarming accuracy. They're even able to fly round buildings before blasting the intended target. Of course, none of the Royal Navy's submarines could be effective without a professional crew. Almost 10% of the Navy's personnel are in the submarine service, more than 3/4 of them on sea duty, and the average age is only 28. The most tangible of the Royal Navy's capabilities is that performed by the Royal Marines. The Marines have a tradition that stretches back more than 300 years, since when they have been employed as gun crews, land-based infantry, and amphibious assault troops. Now they are arguably the fittest and best trained troops in the world, passing all their tests with flying colours before being awarded the coveted Green Beret. 3 Commando Brigade Royal Marines is made up of 3 lightly armed commando units, each over 600 strong. Together they constitute a flexible, rapid reaction force in their own right. The word amphibious normally means that they come via the sea, but today's Marines can also be deployed from the air, carried and supported by the helicopters of the naval air squadrons. They also have artillery and engineering support from Army commando units. Basically, they are a go-anywhere, do-anything force. Overall, the current Royal Navy has been created to take on any threat or action required of it, whether alone or as part of a NATO or United Nations force. And this policy must also continue into the future. The next generation of ships will have to be multi-role, working with smaller crews and even greater computer automation. They will also be used by all the armed services. The first glimpse of the future is HMS Ocean. Going under the rather formal name of Landing Platform Helicopter, she is designed to take Royal Marines and other Army units anywhere in the world and land them either by helicopter or by landing craft. HMS Ocean has already been used for humanitarian relief operations. Submarines will continue their current roles, with some of the older SSMs being replaced by newer ones. In the longer term, it's likely that future submarine designs will be joint projects with other countries. But perhaps the most radical change will be in maritime air power. It is intended that aircraft carriers will still be the core of the Navy's surface flotillas, but the Harrier will be superseded within the next 10 to 20 years. Underway in the United States is a project called the Joint Strike Fighter. Futuristic it may be, but it will undoubtedly be stealthy, supersonic, and able to operate off anything from the giant US carriers to the smaller British ones. At that point, the carriers will need to be replaced. For the last 100 years, the Royal Navy has maintained its tradition as one of the world's most powerful navies, able to cope with war, peacekeeping and humanitarian relief, whether alone or with its allies. To do anything less in the future would be to betray generations of the Royal Navy's finest.
Whatever your sport, whatever your interest, it's all available in the Century series from W.H. Smith and Green Umbrella.